Shalom, saya Monique Rakers dari YouTube Fakta Israel. Saudara, saya ingin Anda menyimak pidato Perdana Menteri Israel Benyamin Netanyahu di sidang Majelis Umum PBB ke-80. Perdana Menteri Israel Benyamin Netanyahu menyampaikan sejumlah fakta tentang Israel. Dan Bibi mengatakan satu kalimat, yakni kebenaran telah dijungkirbalikkan. Bapak Ibu, fakta Israel selalu mengatakan damai hanya bisa jika ada kebenaran. Dan ini betul-betul dibuktikan dengan semua kata-kata, data, dan fakta yang disampaikan oleh Benyamin Netanyahu. Bapak Ibu, 2 Korintus 13 ayat 8 mengatakan, karena kami tidak dapat berbuat apa-apa melawan kebenaran, yang dapat kami perbuat ialah untuk kebenaran. Kita ada di sini, di dunia sekarang ini, untuk dapat melakukan kebenaran. Bapak Ibu, ketika kita tidak melakukan kebenaran, artinya kita sudah melenceng. Artinya kita sudah melakukan kesalahan yang besar. Karena apa? Tuhan mau kita melakukan kebenaran. Dan kalau Bapak Ibu lihat lagi di Amsal 21 ayat 3, dikatakan di sini melakukan kebenaran dan keadilan lebih dikenan Tuhan daripada korban. Bapak Ibu, kita dituntut untuk melakukan kebenaran dan keadilan agar kita dikenan oleh Tuhan. Perkenanan Tuhan hanya bisa kita peroleh jika kita melakukan kebenaran dan keadilan. Bapak Ibu mungkin bisa mengorbankan waktu, mengorbankan tenaga, bahkan mengorbankan uang, materi Bapak Ibu untuk pelayanan, untuk Tuhan. Tapi Amsal 21 ayat 3 mengatakan melakukan kebenaran dan keadilan lebih dikenan Tuhan daripada korban. Dan jelas sekali juga dikatakan di 1 Samuel 26 ayat 23, Tuhan akan membalas kebenaran dan kesetiaan setiap orang. Jadi jelas Bapak Ibu, Tuhan membalas kebenaran dan kesetiaan setiap orang. Kebenarannya versi apa Bapak Ibu? Tentu saja versinya Tuhan. Kebenaran itu absolut, tidak kebenaran yang kompromi terhadap dunia. Ketika Bapak Ibu melihat bahwa apa yang dilakukan oleh Israel saat ini adalah memerangi terorisme dan kekerasan, Bapak Ibu, itu adalah hal benar yang harus dilakukan sebuah negara yang melindungi warga negara dan rakyatnya. Jika Bapak Ibu mengira bahwa Israel melakukan genosida, Bapak Ibu harus perhatikan pernyataan dari Perdana Menteri Benyamin Netanyahu yang menegaskan bahwa mana ada negara yang melakukan genosida memerintahkan evakuasi terhadap orang yang mau digenosida. Dan itu sudah dilakukan Israel. Setiap kali IDF mau menyerang wilayah di Gaza, maka IDF akan memerintahkan evakuasi warga sipil. Evakuasi disampaikan lewat selebaran pamflet yang diterbangkan, diturunkan melalui udara atau melalui SMS atau langsung melalui telepon ke ketua RT setempat misalnya. Itulah cara-cara untuk mengurangi jumlah korban warga sipil. Namun Hamaslah yang memakai warga sipil itu sebagai tameng bagi mereka. Dan sampai hari ini Bapak Ibu kita bisa melihat bahwa Tuhan berkenan jika kita melakukan kebenaran dan keadilan. Adil tidak bisa hanya satu pihak. Adil harus kita melihat dari kedua sisi. Adil nggak Israel dibunuh 1.300 orang pada satu hari di 7 Oktober 2023? Adil nggak Israel membebaskan sandra 253 orang dari tangan teroris? Adil nggak Bapak Ibu ketika hari ini sampai mau mendekati 7 Oktober 2025, hampir 2 tahun masih ada 48 sandera ditawan di Gaza, 20 dalam keadaan hidup dan 28 dalam keadaan tidak bernyawa, tapi mereka pun tetap ditawan. tidak bisa dimakamkan secara layak oleh keluarganya. Adil tidak? Bapak Ibu, kita umat Kristen, kita harus berbeda dari dunia. Nilai-nilai kekristenan harus dinyatakan. Kita harus sempurna, kata Tuhan. Kita harus sempurna karena Bapa kita di sorga sempurna. Bapak Ibu, ketika kita kompromi sedikit pun dengan dunia, maka kita sudah melenceng dari kebenaran. Ketika kita sudah melenceng dari kebenaran, artinya kita sudah tidak sesuai dengan apa yang Tuhan mau. Dan kalau kita lihat lagi Bapak Ibu, jelas sekali bahwa ketika kita ingin menjadi berkat bagi dunia saat ini, dampak yang harus kita nyatakan adalah kita membawa kebenaran, memperkenalkan kebenaran itu kepada setiap orang. Memperkenalkan kebenaran itu adalah salah satunya cara untuk mewujudkan perdamaian. Damai hanya bisa terwujud jika ada kebenaran, dan damai hanya bisa tanpa teroris. Salam damai dari Fakta Israel, saya Monique Rakers.
So here's the point I wanted to make. Our enemies hate all of us with equal venom. They want to drag the modern world back to the past, to a dark age of violence, fanaticism, and terror. I think many of you are already feeling in your own societies the radical Islamist surge. You know, I'm sure you do, you know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. So I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us privately thank us. They tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence, once said, "If the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. He said, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us. President Trump understands better than any other leader that Israel and America face a common threat. He showed the world that when Iran and its proxies murder Americans, take Americans hostage, shout death to America, burn American flags, and try to assassinate the President of the United States, not once, but twice. He showed them there is a price to pay for all that. But regrettably, many leaders who are represented in this hall, they send a very different message. Sure, in the days immediately following October 7th, many of them supported Israel. But that support quickly evaporated when Israel did what any self-respecting nation would do in the wake of such a savage attack. We fought back. Now just imagine, just sit back for a second and imagine an attack against America proportioned to the attack against Israel on October 7th. Imagine a regime, a terror regime, dispatching thousands of terrorists to invade the United States. They massacre 40,000 Americans. They take 10,000 Americans hostage. What do you think America would do? You think America would leave that regime standing? You don't think that. No way, not a chance. The United States would wipe out that terror regime and ensure that such savagery would never threaten America again. This is precisely what Israel is doing in Gaza. We're wiping out the terror regime of Hamas and ensuring that this savagery will never threaten Israel again. That's what we are doing. That's what any self-respecting government would do. Yet, and it's a yet that I'm sorry to say here, yet over time, many world leaders buckled. They buckled under the pressure of a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a seven-front war against barbarism with many of your nations opposing us. Astoundingly, as we fight the terrorists who murdered many of your citizens, you are fighting us. You condemn us, you embargo us, and you wage political and legal warfare, it's called lawfare, against us. I say to the representatives of those nations, this is not an indictment of Israel. It's an indictment of you. It's an indictment of weak-kneed leaders who appease evil rather than support a nation whose brave soldiers guard you from the barbarians at the gate. They're already penetrating your gates. When will you learn? You can't appease your way out of jihad, and you won't escape the Islamist storm by sacrificing Israel. To overcome that storm, you have to stand with Israel. But that's not what you're doing. As the prophets of Israel foretold in the Bible, you've turned good into evil and evil into good. Now I want to drill down on this. Take the false charge of genocide. Israel is accused of deliberately targeting civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposite is true. The head of urban warfare studies, Colonel John Spencer, he's perhaps the world's greatest expert on urban warfare. And he says, Israel is applying more measures to minimize civilian casualties than any military in history. And because we're doing that, the ratio of non-combatant to combatant casualties is less than 2 to 1 in Gaza. That's an astoundingly low ratio, lower than NATO's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, especially when you consider that Gaza is one of the most densely populated urban areas on Earth. It has hundreds of miles of terror tunnels underground, and it has countless terror towers above ground, and thousands of terrorists embedded in the tunnels and in these towers in civilian areas. If you want to see what measures Israel takes to avoid civilian casualties in this war, just look at what we're doing now in Gaza City, the last Hamas stronghold, one of the 2 last strongholds. For 3 weeks, Israel dropped millions of leaflets, sent millions of text messages, and made countless phone calls urging civilians to leave Gaza City before our military moves in. At the same time, Hamas implants itself in mosques, schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, and tries to force those civilians not to leave, to stay in harm's way. And it often threatens them at gunpoint if they try to do so. For Israel, every civilian casualty is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. Hamas uses civilians as human shields and as props in its sick propaganda war in Israel, against Israel, a propaganda war that the Western media buys hook, line, and sinker. Now, despite Hamas's threats, close to 700,000 Gazans, almost 750,000, have already heeded our calls and moved to safe zones. Now I want to ask you a simple question, a simple, logical question. Would a country committing genocide plead with the civilian population it is supposedly targeting to get out of harm's way? Would we tell them, get out, if we want to commit genocide? We're trying to get them out. And Hamas is trying to keep them in. And this charge is so baseless. The comparison to genocide, wholesale slaughter of populations. What, did the Nazis ask the Jews to leave, kindly leave, go out? Did others, you want me to name all the genocidal leaders of history? Just go one by one. Did anyone do this? Did they say, get out so we can come in Of course not. So the truth has been turned on its head. Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization whose charter calls for the murder of all Jews on the planet, this genocidal organization is given a pass. It's barely mentioned. While Israel, which does everything it can to get civilians out of harm's way, Israel is put in the dock. What a joke.